Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christine Dennis, and I'm going to be working with you today, kind of getting some procurement information down and figured out. So I hope you received the email with procurement checklist information, and we're going to kind of walk through all of that. Little bit of my background: I'm a CPA. I used to audit tribes and tribal governments, housing authorities, casinos, all of that. And now I'm on the consulting side to just kind of work with you and help you get more comfortable with all of the paperwork and all of the processes that go into this. So if you want to introduce yourself either by turning on your camera or just in the chat, either way, you are more than welcome to, and I'm going to be over here admitting people. Anybody want to volunteer?
Jacob Castillo, Kickapoo Tribe in Kansas.
Hey, Jacob. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
This is Tamara Hebert, ICWA rep for Big Sandy Rancheria.
Oh, hey.
We have some folks that are filling in their information in the chat as well. So David, welcome. Good to see you guys.
Welcome, David. I've been out there before. I always love it when I see places I've been pop up.
Okay, so while folks are, if you've just joined, if you can go ahead and let us know what grantee you're with. You can just put a note in the chat box with your name and the grantee. My name is Kelly Crow. I'm with First Pick Inc. I am supporting NCI along with my team on the finance and procurement side. And as Christine said, she's a subject matter expert in procurement and really all things accounting associated. And so she is helping us put together some of the processes and documentation that is going to be required as part of the micro grant project that you guys are all a part of. I know that Esther from NCI is on. Esther, I wasn't sure if you wanted to say anything before I jump in and give people a high-level overview and then hand it over to Christine.
Sure, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. Great, so thank you everyone. As Kelly mentioned, my name is Esther Librato. I'm with the National Congress of American Indians. I just want to thank you all for being here. Are especially thankful to First Pick for working with us to put together this training. And I just, want to thank to all of you who have gone through and worked with us through the budget development process, and then are participating in this required training. For NCAI, our goal really is to make sure that we get these funds out to where they need to be to provide services to victims of crime in Indian country. And as part of that, we want to make sure that we are walking through kind of every step of the process to make sure that we give all of you all of the information and resources that we can to make sure that this is as successful of a project and as least stressful as possible to the extent that is in fact possible. So again, thank you so much to First Pick for all of your work on this, and thank you to all of the sub-grantees for attending. And I'll be here if you have any additional questions. I'm happy to jump in. Otherwise, I will also just be listening along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. So really quickly before Christine jumps in, I wanted to give just a brief overview of what we're hoping to share with you all. And I want to reiterate what Esther was saying, which is that the whole intention of the micro grant is to make sure that you guys can get the money to serve victims. And so we are trying to make sure that that involves the minimal amount of paperwork and bureaucratic processes possible, but staying within the bounds of what's required by the Office of Victims of Crime and the Department of Justice. Some folks may know from past experience that some of the requirements or the oversight at DOJ can be a little bit stricter than it is at other agencies, and maybe that has prevented folks from being able to engage with this funding source in the past. But part of the goal here for NCI is to make sure that not only these particular funds are able to get into the hands of the people who need them in order to serve victims, but that throughout the process, we're also working with you all to provide any technical assistance or training that you might need, so that as the tribal set-aside funding comes available through OVC in the future, that you can apply directly to them and feel confident that you are able to manage those grants, grant funding under the expectations of OVC. So what we are going to do today is talk through a little bit about what the overall requirements are for procurement. You all indicated that you are looking to include a vehicle purchase or lease in your grants. You either included it in your detailed budget or it was in your application, which is why you've been invited. Since it's a large purchase, we've just brought you all together to share what the requirements on DOJ side for a procurement of a purchase that size would look like, and then also to share with you the basic paperwork that we've put together to help you record or document your process, and that you will submit at the point that you apply for reimbursement for that purchase. I think the number one thing that Christine and I want everybody to hear from us is that this documentation is representative of the information that we need to see at the point that you've made the purchase and are looking for reimbursement. We recognize that many of your tribes already have processes in place to document your procurement process that you likely have to use in order to get sign off on and approval for the purchase. If that information includes, or if that documentation includes the information that we're requesting here, you do not have to transfer your information into these forms. These forms we made to help those who don't currently have a documentation process in place for procurement, but we're not asking you to duplicate your efforts. If you think that your process or your documentation meets all the required information, but you're not sure, we're more than happy to look over what you have and let you know if there's any other information that the Office of Victims Crimes may need that maybe you're not used to. There's a lease versus purchase that is required by OVC that not all agencies have, so we can help you, with any of the additional things, but our intention is for this to not be a cumbersome process for you. But at the same time, it's also meant to give you the opportunity to feel comfortable, be able to ask questions, and if you get to the end of this and you say, wow, that was a lot of information, I'm going to need a lot of help, please reach out to us, because we are available to be able to do more one-on-one support as you go into this process and look at purchasing both an item like a vehicle, but if you have other large purchases as well, we are totally here to support you in that. So I just want to kind of phrase all of that, because when you look at the documentation, I just didn't want anybody to say, wait a minute, now I have to do a whole bunch of extra paperwork. But from there, I'll hand it over to Christine. And if you guys have any questions, if you want to use the chat box, or I don't know Zoom as well as Christine. Christine, do you want them to just unmute or use the chat box, or I'll let you?
Whatever they're comfortable with. I don't care.
Sounds good.
Either way, we'll make it work. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, I just want to reiterate. This is a summary of the information you need to have. It doesn't have to be in this form, but this is all the info you need. The first document is the checklist, and we'll talk about where that comes into play. First question, how familiar is everybody with their own procurement policy? As in, do you know in your policy what it says the limit is for a small purchase? The federal limit is 250,000. Is anybody using that, or are you using a lower amount? Unless
Lower.
you're using a lower amount, what amount are you using?
Is that for the small purchase?
Yeah, the small purchase. There's the micro purchase where we've got like the 10,000 limit, and then 10,001 to 250,000 is a small purchase.
Oh,
You
I
may
was thinking of the micro purchase, so I'm not sure.
okay, and that's fine. We love a micro purchase because there's less documentation involved. I'm going to assume probably most of you are using the 250, which means if you're buying a vehicle, we're looking at a small purchase. Here are the things that under the federal requirements, and that would be 2 CFR 200, here are the things you have to do, okay? You have to what kind of procurement method you're using. This would be pretty obvious because you're buying a vehicle, it better not be more than $250,000. So you're going to award based on price, okay? How many of you have a 3-quote requirement in your policy?
Us. We do.
Most people do. The federal requirement is at least 2 responsive and responsible. Most policies say 3. So I'm going to assume that we're going to do 3, all right? Vendor that we selected, vendors rejected, and why. Is the cost reasonable? Did we do a purchase order or did we do a full contract? If you're buying a vehicle, are you going to do a contract or a purchase order? Most people want to do a purchase order just because it's easier. And honestly, if you're buying it straight out with cash, it makes perfect sense that you're not going to want to do a full contract. The only things that might be included would be any service guarantees they make, anything like that. So keep it as simple as possible. Always have to do Indian preference. And we'll get into that a little bit more as needed. And then we have to check the debarred list. How many people have checked the debarred list and are familiar?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good times. www.sam.gov. You have to check that anytime you make a purchase with grant money, okay? Anytime. Also with the vehicle, we're going to look at a lease versus purchase. How many of you think you'll use the vehicle less than, 10,000 miles a year? Does anybody think that you'll use it, that it's just not going to be used that much?
Well, most of it, well, I don't know how others, but like where we're remote and rural, we'll probably be we'll probably be over that because of where we're located.
Yeah, and that's going to be a key factor when you're looking at lease versus purchase, because on a lease you can normally get about 10,000 miles, and anything over that, they're going to hit you with some big fees. So let me just tell you right now, if you're spending or if you expect to drive more than 10,000, and those of you who are extremely rural, I can guarantee you will, then you just need to document we are going to purchase due to penalties involved. Okay? Tamara does not. You all are not going to do more. You may actually do better with a lease, theoretically. We'll talk about some of the considerations. So these are just the basic general procurement requirements for a small purchase. Does anybody have any questions? before we start getting into a little more on the documentation. Okay, I got a touch screen here, so don't get dizzy. So what's the first thing we should do when we are planning to make a purchase? Don't look at the screen, I'll make you dizzy. What's the very first thing we do? Scope of work. You have to sit down and basically spell out to yourself and to the vendors, this is what we need. For our purposes, we are buying a passenger van that will hold 6 easily, okay? May be able to hold a couple more, but you know, don't tell me if you're going to. What's our justification? Tribe needs a passenger van to transport our participants to various services. They're talking to the tribe's vehicle specialist, could be a procurement person. Y'all have a motor pool, you'll talk to them. It depends on who you've got in your organization that can detail this information out. So after talking to them and after talking to the ED, you've decided your best fit is going to be a 6-passenger van with a cold weather package because you're in Wisconsin. Okay? You wanted a 4-wheel drive, but they don't actually make one. So you'll go with the basic model plus the cold weather package. Reasonable cost based on internet build was $36,400. How did I get to that? Have y'all ever built a car on the World Wide Webs? Does anybody ever do that?
Yep.
I did when I went to buy my last car. I built it online. Why would I do that? Find out how much it's going to cost me to get what I want. Okay? Here is my justification right here. I just printed it. Okay? Do I need more than that? No, I really don't. I went with the basic silver ice because it had no additional charges. Okay, so here's our scope of work. What are the things that we should consider as we are putting that scope of work together? Again, what kind of vehicle do you need? Is anybody buying a truck? Actually, if you don't mind in chat, tell me what it is you're planning to buy, and let's talk about how you would scope that out.
And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, you should be able to see the chat button at the bottom of your screen. There's a little bubble. If you click on that, you can open it up and then you can just type your answer in there.
Is anybody looking at a truck? Are you looking at a van? Are you looking at just a regular car? What kind of things do you need to think about?
So, I don't know if anybody else was answering yet, but I'm looking at maybe a passenger vehicle where I can have room that's elder accessible, because I'm trying to put together an elder abuse victim services program. So I want it to be accessible for elders, and then any kind of medical equipment that they may need to haul, such as wheelchairs, oxygen, walkers, stuff like that. So not so much looking at a truck, but more of maybe a sport utility vehicle where there's a back area that can house those things.
Yeah, it looks like quite a few of you are looking at moderate size SUVs. Okay, first off, that's what I drive. So I know that building it online works really well, and it will give you a really good price. And yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jacob's looking SUV or truck. Yeah, you just described exactly what you need to think about in your scope of work. We know if we are developing a program for elder abuse and we are going to need to transport elders, oh, I knew what you meant, don't worry about it, then we know probably we're going to need handicap accessible. So is there anything additional we might need? Can we do a ramp? We definitely will need room for the equipment. I think that's a really good thought process. You're gonna need a trailer hitch. How many people are going to be using the vehicle at any time? Are you looking at, you know, maybe you'll need a room for multiple passengers, or are you looking more at elder and maybe a caretaker or one support person or something like that? You know, how do you realistically think this is going to play out? Possibly wheelchair accessible. Definitely you will need room to store the wheelchair. What else might you need? My first thought is four-wheel drive. Is that an option that you think you need? How many of you all are pretty rural? And your tenant or your participants are pretty rural? Yeah, most people are. Four-wheel drive is probably going to be a necessity. Do you need, I'm trying to think about mine. Do you need additional fuel efficiency? Do you want to go with like a hybrid or something? Is there any reason that you could justify that? Honestly, I think the only reason you could justify it is if it's the same price or cheaper, which is pretty much never the case. So probably not. I know some tribes have like natural gas stations on site, and as a result, that's what they choose for their vehicles. Can you do that? Mm-hmm. If you can justify it and you've got a darn good reason, yeah, do it. Is there anything else you can think about that you might need to consider including? I feel like we've hit all of the big ones. Maybe a trailer hitch. Do you need one? Are you going to be dragging anything? What do you think?
In my past cases I've worked here, we've had to move 2 or 3 individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So just having room to be able to move the family and all that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what are you going to use it for? And I think that's a reasonable consideration. How many people, I know some people are looking more with different programs. I'm now focused on the elder. You know, there's often a caretaker plus a family member plus the actual participant. Do we have room to transport everybody plus any medical equipment comfortably? Yeah, we're not looking at transporting them in luxury, but we definitely want them to be able to get in and out, for it to be relatively comfortable. Anybody have questions on developing this scope of work? Sounds like from the information I'm getting, y'all have really given it some thought, and I'm glad to hear that. Thing about procurement, the better you can figure out exactly what it is you want up front, the smoother the process goes, because you know exactly what you're asking each vendor for. They know exactly how to bid it based on your specs, okay? Anything else you want to talk about on scope of work? You guys feel pretty good with it? I do. How about used vehicles? Can you purchase a used vehicle? Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
is it going to be more cost effective for you? And the answer is maybe. Is that something you should consider? Yeah. Depending on what you have and what the market looks like, you know, you may be able to, if you're looking at like an SUV, a smaller SUV, honestly, I would consider looking at some of the rental overstock. Gently used with a good warranty, and you just hit exactly where we're going, is thinking about the warranty package. You know, what's important to you? Should you purchase an extended warranty? Honestly, my gut reaction is no.
That's what
Yeah. If you can't afford to fix it, then maybe.
Okay.
Because as a general rule, and again, I don't sell cars, don't hold me to this, but as a general rule, if you can pay for the maintenance, probably don't need an extended warranty, but that's something you should definitely consider. Look at what the basic warranty is. I know when I bought my car, it's basically bumper to bumper coverage for, I think, 3 years with, and that's just no additional cost. So I was all about that.
And then we would just build that into our budget though, like for repairs and maintenance in general, keep oil changes, balance and tire rotations.
I don't know that you necessarily need to put that in your budget, but you need to consider that when you start calling vendors to get quotes.
Okay.
Tell them what is the basic warranty. What does this vehicle come with? And tell them, by the way, we're going to pay cash. Is that going to help?
And Christine, just to clarify, if the vehicle is only used for this project and it's not being used across other projects, then you can include the cost of maintenance and fuel into the budget for your grant program.
Yes.
If it's going to be shared across multiple uses, and Christine, maybe you can talk a little bit about how people should be approaching this if the vehicle is going to be shared across multiple uses and whether or not they need to look at prorating that cost or such. But if it's going to be used across multiple uses, then you would have to prorate some of those costs during the grant period time. So up until the June of 2022, you could cover maintenance up through that time. You just need to prorate if it's being used for any other programming apart from this particular grant.
Yeah. As Kelly brought up, you cannot let another department use the vehicle you purchased without paying into it. Okay. Good question here. The tribe has a transportation department. Can the vehicle technicians here perform the maintenance and repairs on the vehicle? Yes. The only thing I would say is check and see what the vehicle warranty says on that, because sometimes for your warranty to be effective, and this is not an additional paid, this is the one that comes with the vehicle, for that to be good, they require all maintenance to be done by the dealership. So if there's a warranty and if it would be invalidated by having your own transportation department work on it, then don't do that. Otherwise, sure, why not? And if you're buying a used vehicle, no reason why not. Okay, any other questions on this? Good questions. It sounds like you all are thinking about this realistically, and I'm glad to hear that. So speaking of used vehicles, how many of y'all are going to look through GSA and see if there's anything there?
Yeah.
Anybody? Can you do that? Absolutely. Should you do it? Depends on what's in and available. JSA, you just never know for sure what they've got in stock. Okay. So we've covered a budget. We've decided here our budget based on our internet build is $36,400. We've developed our scope of work. We need a passenger van, needs to seat 6. We need the cold weather package so that the engine doesn't freeze. That's what we require. So now what happens? Now we find some people who want to give
Develop
us.
develop a
Quote.
RFP or a RFQ, request for quote.
We don't even need to do that much. We've got a scope of work put together. And unless your policy says otherwise, all you need is a scope of work. I would not include the reasonable cost when you're notifying your vendors. This reasonable cost is for your purposes, okay? Why do you not want to tell them what you found the reasonable cost to be? Because it's going to come in at $36,399.
Yeah.
Yeah. That part is for your information, so you can evaluate. The rest of it is for their information. So how can you get this information out? Well, you can pick up the phone and call them. And here's the basic solicitation form. Description of what we've got. The first thing we're going to do is this for goods and services. And the answer is goods. Is the award going to be made primarily on price? If we're buying a car, the answer is yes. I mean, we care how much it's going to cost us, period. Basic scope, need a passenger van to transport participants, cold weather package, we've got attached for specs. In this case, we have called, emailed, faxed, whatever method you've chosen. This time we called Bubba's Vans and Cars. Talked to Bubba, talked to him on September 30th. He does not get Indian preference. He does not get tribal preference. Price that he's giving us is $33,750. I took the bid, so I'm going to sign it. Okay. How many bids did we say we need?
3.
Okay, so are we finished?
No.
Yeah, we're just getting
We
started.
started.
Yeah, we're just getting warmed up. Based on what we know, is this a decent price? Yeah, it's in the ballpark. Are we finished? Absolutely not. Let's talk to Jimmy's Car Joint. Notice that the description on here is exactly the same as the other. Why is that important?
Consistency.
Consistency. This bid is going to come down to price, which means we need to give them as much information as we can to make sure that everybody is bidding on the exact same thing, okay? That's the key to doing this type of a procurement, is everybody comfortable with that. Award will be made on price, therefore we need to tell them as much information as we can. Okay, this vendor receives Indian preference, and we're going to assume that they've applied and we've got the documentation. Okay, their price is $35,000. Is that still reasonable? Is that still in the ballpark?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say.
Yeah. How many of you know that you have an Indian preference clause in your procurement policy.
Ooh. Mandy, do we?
I'm not sure if we do. I'll have to look through my policy here, but we should. We
Yeah, you definitely should.
Ah,
Check your policy and make sure you have it. So that's step one. Step two is then make sure that whatever your policy says you're doing is what you're really doing. Okay? As an auditor, that's always a big area for findings. We don't want you to have findings. So make sure you understand what your Indian preference requirements are and how you are using that preference to determine, okay? So we've checked yes, Indian preference. Are we done? Why not? We've got two.
need one more.
Why do we need one more?
Our policy says
Policy
three.
says so. If your policy does not say 3 bids, how many bids do you have to have?
I'd still say 3.
If your policy does not say you have to have, and this is by federal requirement, at least 2 responsible vendors willing and able to compete. Okay, in your case, most of you've decided that the answer to that is 3. So here we go again. We've got the exact same information again for a good scope of work rationale. Passenger van transport participant, cold weather package due to location, see attached specs. We're talking to Mike Brown's cars now. Mike does not get Indian preference. Vendor price here is $34,800. Do we have enough bids now?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. We have no reason to believe any of them are non-reasonable based on the prices. I mean, I'm looking at the prices, looks good. What's the big assumption we're making here? That we've checked sam.gov and none of them are on it. They're not on the naughty list. And when you guys go to make purchases as the tribe, do you all ask around to different tribes or even within your tribal departments as, you know, who's bought vehicles, where did you go, why, all that good stuff?
Yes.
Good.
We do. Yeah.
Why is that important? Because it is.
Maybe they had a bad experience, or maybe the process was easier, or just to find out what their experience with them was like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe they sold us a lemon and didn't do anything about it. And maybe they promised one price and then came in with a bunch of extras there at the end. Ask these questions. You should only be doing business with responsible contractors, okay? That is in the regs. Not only is it common sense, it is in the regs. If a bidder is not responsible, as in they cannot get you what you want in the time and manner you want it, do not do business with them. Okay? It's really that simple. If you know you've done business, you bought a car from them in the past and there were lots of problems and they kept saying, oh, well, that's not covered and that's not covered and that's not covered, don't do business with them again, okay? Make sure your policy says you have the ability to do that, and that is contract administration. not going to spend much time talking about that, but I will say, once you've made a purchase, you need to then follow through and see, did we get everything we wanted in the manner we said it was supposed to happen? How did it go? Did we have issues? Did something go wrong? And you should document that and keep that in your file, okay? Okay, you have to do Indian preference. Does anybody do tribal preference? Whereas you give additional preference to your own tribal members?
I haven't seen it here at the Yerington Paiute tribe. I think
Okay,
it's
all
something
right.
that's, I
Yeah,
think it's something that's going to be done eventually, because we are working on the policies and stuff, but not at this time.
okay. Yeah, that's a council decision. You have the right to do that. Okay, you are encouraged to give preference to small minority women-owned businesses.
Okay.
Should also say that in your policy. Do you do any other preferences? Some tribes have like veteran preference, that if you are a veteran business owner, yeah, we'll give you a little bump.
And that should be in our policies and procedures?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be in your policies and procedures if you're going to do it. Again, Indian preference, that's you've got to. And when we talk about Indian preference, does that mean the native vendor always gets the bid?
No. It does or it doesn't?
You are correct. It does not.
I've always understood Indian preference to be if you had two equally qualified vendors or persons, that then the preference would apply to the Indian. But if you had a non-Indian who was more qualified, then you would make that decision accordingly.
Depends on your policy. Yeah, we're going to go with the X factor here, and that's because it is the most common method, okay? So here we go. We've got our quotes. We've got Bubba's, we've got Jimmy's, and we got Mike Brown. Just looking at this, if nobody had Indian preference, who would get the award?
Bubba's.
Bubba, no question. Mike Brown's totally out of here. Why is Mike Brown totally out of here? He's not the low bidder and he doesn't have Indian preference. So, sorry, Mike, you're out. So, here's our issue. Our low bidder is not the Indian-owned company. Now, what do we do?
Look at the preference.
We go to our X factor, okay? And this is critical, okay? This is the biggest thing you need to understand, how to apply your Indian preference. If you have X factor, this is set up for any procurement under $100,000 has roughly a 10% factor. So what's the quote for the lowest non-Indian vendor? And that would be Bubba at $33,750. We're all agreed on that, yes?
Yes.
Okay. What's the preference? $33,750 times 10%. And then add that to our low price. which now gives us 37,125. Okay, does that make sense? What is this telling me?
Go up to 37,125.
Yes, yeah,
It says what?
You can go to 37,125.
Yeah, yeah. As long as the native vendor is under 37,125, they're getting the contract. They came in at 38, would they get it? No,
no,
absolutely not.
no.
If they were the low bidder, if Jimmy's Car Joint was the low bidder, would we have to do this?
No.
No.
No, no.
Low bidders, qualified Indian owned vendor, they get the contract and we're done. Okay, this is only if it's a non-Indian low bidder. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, chat group, what say you? You guys feel comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Christine, can I add just one point for folks? As Christine mentioned, since it is required in order for you to apply Indian preference, it has to be in your procurement policy prior to you procuring the item. So if you're hearing all of this saying, we want that, but we don't have that, please let us know, because Christine has put together some template procurement policies and can work with you all to either update your existing or to adopt a new. But as we all know, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get these policies adopted through the appropriate channels. And so we want to work with you as quickly as possible to be able to get this information in, so that you can use it in procurement of any of the purchases or service procurement on this grant. So go ahead and just reach out to us, and we will start working with you and your team to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos. I like writing policy. So yeah. If you've got questions, again, let us know. We'll make this happen. Okay, so we're going to summarize all of this. Why are we going to, do we have to write all of it like this? No. Could we just circle stuff and say, here's the Indian preference rate and this is the amount we're using? Sure.
Yeah, and to add to that, the versions of the PDFs that I sent you all are fillable PDFs, just to try and make it easier so that you don't have to print and scan and such. But again, to Christine's point, whatever is the easiest for you, if you prefer to print them out and handwrite them and then scan them in, you know, we want to make this as easy as possible, but have the documentation in case any auditors come in and ask questions.
Yeah, and honestly, I would normally just do the autofill part of it, but I wanted to write it so you could see really clearly what is the part that's on the form versus what have I written, what have we added. So hopefully this makes it easier for you. Okay, so we've decided Jimmy is definitely the low bidder after preference applied. So now what do we need to do? What's the one thing left for us to do? Look at lease versus purchase. So here, don't watch, you'll make yourself dizzy. Okay, so, and let me tell you right now, this is something you can get your dealer to do for you. If not, there are multiple places online that will kind of help you walk through this, okay? So the vehicle information here is, it's a $35,000 vehicle. The interest rate on the lease is 6%. We have to do a down payment of $1,000. You're getting grant money, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the first thing that we know looking at the vehicle information? We cannot use grant money to pay interest on the lease.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a disallowed cost. So right there, that's a strike against a lease, correct? Unless you want to pay for it. And yeah, maybe your council does. Probably they don't, but they might. So I'm comparing, and I just ran it as a 3-year useful life. I divided the vehicle cost by 3 to get the cost per purchase per year. This is a high number, all right? Realistically, it'd be probably closer to 7,000. Okay? So that's cost to purchase per year. Cost to lease, $687 a month plus the down payment, came out to $92.44. Then we had to look at additional mileage. And in this case, this gives you 10,000 a year. So we'd have 2,000 miles that come with fees and penalties. Why do they come with fees and penalties? Because the lease is only for that period. So if you want to use it more, we're going to make you pay more. So the lease cost per year based on these circumstances is $12,244. Plus, we know we can't even pay interest. So we'd need to take that interest payment out or somehow account for that. Does that make sense to everybody?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
The other thing that we should consider, at the end of the lease, what do we own?
No.
We own nothing.
Nothing. No.
At the end of the useful life, and we went straight line depreciation, which and at a 5-year useful life, which would leave you with roughly a $14,000 asset at the end of 3 years. Should you consider that as part of your lease versus purchase? You should. Why? What's the residual value of this vehicle have to do with anything?
What the salvage is.
Yeah, you've already bought it. You've got it. You can keep using it, especially, if you've got vehicle technicians in your tribe that can keep it maintained. You may be driving this car for 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other thing? Even if you don't drive for 10 to 15 years, can you trade that in and reduce your future cost? Yes, you can.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Is this one pretty simple that we definitely want to purchase instead of lease in this case?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're not going to be going over, maybe it would make sense to lease. But for most of you, if you're, hard rural, and I know a lot of you are, honestly, with the mileage, it's just not going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this little write-up is enough to justify we are going to purchase as opposed to lease, right? Any questions, any comments, anything?
Just to reiterate what Christine is saying, if you are speaking to dealers to get these quotes anyways, we recommend that you put this work on their plate because they benefit from you purchasing as opposed to leasing. And so just ask them to give you a buy to lease calculation that you can print up and you can attach, so that you're not having to do this work.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not complicated work to do, but at the same time, if they're trying to get your business, let them do it for you. Yeah. I certainly would. Okay, does anybody have any questions on that?
Nope.
No.
Is there any documentation that we haven't talked about? Because now we're going back to our big summary. Here we go. We've got a description is in there. We've got our 3 quotes. We selected Jimmy. Why did we reject the other 2?
Why did we
It was the price.
Yeah, price.
The price.
Was the cost on this reasonable? Yep.
Yes.
We did a purchase order. We used Indian preference. We checked the debarred list. We've done our lease versus purchase. Are we done?
Probably no.
Do we have the vehicle?
No.
Let's say we do, because we bought it. We now have a purchase order out there that's ready to buy that car. Are we done with the procurement? The second that car comes in, we are done with the procurements. That's the basic paperwork and the basic requirements that you need to do for vehicle purchases. Okay? What questions have you got?
Wow.
Well, people are thinking, I'll just share, we're going to make this documentation available to you all. If you can scroll through real quick, Christine, you'll be required to submit something similar to this checklist that shows that you went through the steps. A quote acceptance form. This is just something that shows the overall summary of what your quotes were and the decision that you made. And then something that shows each of, some basic information on each of your quotes. This form has been created because sometimes you might be doing it by phone, but some of this information might also be through email or something like that. And then at the very end, the 2 additional documents would be the review of the scope of service, the scope of work, and then what you looked up as the price, and then your buy to lease cost evaluation. So we will be providing this to you. You'll attach that along with your proof of payment when you make the purchase and submit that along with the purchase request. What we want to reiterate for anybody who was not on the phone at the beginning is that you're not required to use these exact forms if you have a process that has already that's already providing the same information, but through your own documentation process, and you look at it and you say, yeah, everything's covered, then you can use those forms. If you have any questions about whether or not everything is covered in your own documentation, feel free to share it with us. You all have my email address. This is Kelly, because I sent you out the invite. You feel free to email it to us. Christine will review it and come back to you if there's anything that she thinks might need to be added, answer any questions. But we are trying to minimize the amount of paperwork and extra time that you're having to spend on this process.
Kelly, do you want me to throw my email in, or do you want everything to come through you?
You're actually on there.
Oh, well, here.
Sorry, Christine is on the, I realized that I did not do BCCs, so I apologize. You guys now have everybody's email. So Christine Dennis, her email is on the CC line of the invitation that you received.
And I just threw it in chat as well, so feel free to use it. And if you've just got a quick question about whether a form's going to work or anything like that, feel free to shoot me an email. It's totally fine. Any of us, we're here to help you. We want you guys to be able to do this correctly with all the documents with as little drama as possible, okay? So if you've got an idea that is going to give you the same information and simplify, go ahead. Let's talk about it and see, does it cover everything? If you've already got a pretty good procurement policy or procurement department in place that's already providing this, Don't reinvent the wheel, okay? So what questions have you got on these forms? Anybody?
I think the forms are going to be much easier
I think so.
than the last time that I purchased a vehicle. So using the form will be better streamlined. And then I
Good.
was wondering, so does it make more sense to ask for a buy versus lease when you're reaching out for those quotes, or not until you have a vehicle, in a specific vehicle in mind? Like, or after you select? Because the last time I purchased a vehicle, I went through something similar. Of course, I kind of made up the process on my own a little bit, but
Yeah, we don't want you to have to make it all up on your own anymore.
but the lease versus purchase was something that I had to clear up in the long run, because I didn't do that ahead of time. I didn't do it during the process where I was asking for quotes. So I had to go back into it.
I think that you probably are fine either way. I would almost, let me think. You know, I think you can go either way. You can ask them to provide that documentation when you're going through the process, or you could do it once you've made the decision. Again, they should be able to pull up a screen and pop this out pretty easily.
Okay.
But the one thing that the reason I'm not saying 100% that you want to do that, because I'm afraid you're going to get sucked into a time hole on that as they're trying to talk to you about different options and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. And if you do it this much longer, then you can save this much, and we'll put this much down. I mean, it's already complicated enough. And let's face it, since we know that the interest cannot be paid with grant funds, it's highly unlikely you're going to be doing this. So, you know, Esther or Kelly, is there any reason they can't do this at the end, in your opinion?
OVC just says you have to have documentation of it. So as long as we're only asking you for documentation after the purchase has been complete. We're not asking you to date it. So whatever.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do, there you go. There'll be fewer decisions and less, like, once you get to this point, they want to sell you that car anyway because of the commission.
Right.
So, you know, let's let them figure it out. And that would be my thought process on it.
Cool.
Cool. What else you got? Anybody have anything? We'd originally thought we're actually about 5 minutes, I think, over, but I'm still going to be hanging out here. If anybody has to leave, if you've still got questions, I'll be here.
And then one last thing. So, and before we can even start to think about this, we got to get our procurement policy updated with the things that we needed prior to even starting this process.
Yeah,
That's, I agree. I agree 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might as well be very proactive. We'll solve a lot of problems right there.
Well, and the thing about the policy is that these requirements are all 2 CFR 200, which means they apply to any grant fund. So it's a tribal across the board policy. It's not just for your program only. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, you can certainly modify it to fit an individual department, but the overall model policy is expected to be used tribe-wide. What else you got? Okay, well, I'm going to hang out here. Yes.
I just thank you guys for putting this. It's so much easier just to see like this, especially with a Zoom meeting, and actually preparing these forms makes it a lot easier to be consistent
Good.
in the purchase of using the procurement policies.
Yeah, we don't.
And for our auditors, I mean, this makes life a lot easier, just like you said, to help the auditors, because in our policy, it does state that we have to have 3 bids over anything over 5,000, but especially with an asset.
Yeah, and trust me, your auditors will get really excited if you have this little checklist. They'll be like, yes.
Yeah, finally, they're doing it right.
Auditors love a checklist. I can
Yes,
just
they
tell you
do.
that right now.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, very good. Kelly, you want to close us out here? You want
Yeah,
me?
I just wanted to thank everybody. We did record all of this, so if you will send everybody a copy of the recording in case anybody else on your team needs to watch it. And I did attach the documents to the email, but they will also be available on the online reporting system. Mandy will definitely reach out to you about setting up the time to talk through the new policy, but if anybody else is interested in doing some one-on-one TA or training around these things, then definitely let us know. For those of you who are also invited to the call for tomorrow or Thursday, that has to do with contract services, and it is a little bit different because it's not just about cost, it's also about the quality of service. So we really ask that you join that one as well. We promise to keep it as quick and painless as possible, but we think it's really valuable to join that as well, which is why we tried not to combine them into 2 full hours of training. So some of you we will see tomorrow or Thursday, and we hope that everybody has a great day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone get invited to that call for tomorrow, Thursday?
Yes.
If you have a contract services on your budget, then you should have received the invitation.
Okay.
If you